This press conference will address a new Media Matters report, which is entitled Left Behind, the Skewed Representation of Religion in the Major News Media.
As a first step, we thought it was important to know who is the media turning to in order to represent religious opinion in America as it relates to politics. Who are those voices that we see on the news that are supposed to represent religious Americans? And the answer that we found is that overwhelmingly those voices are conservative.
I do come from an evangelical background, and perhaps of all backgrounds, it is the most deserving of being associated with a conservative stereotype. But I am an example of a growing shift from the monopoly of the religious right on a conservative ethos. And in fact, I think I'm an example that monologue and domination by the religious right is actually becoming a fact of history rather than contemporary news.
Perhaps the report can encourage the discarding of our neat categories of where the action is. In our time of alienation, separation, vilification, and demonization, it could be that an effective call to forgiveness, understanding, mutual respect, and healing could be news that merits a headline, 2 columns, and maybe even a color picture.
The overwhelming presence in the news media of conservative religious voices leads to the false implication that to be religious is to be conservative, and worse, that to be progressive is to lack faith or even to be against faith. The polls in America show that nothing could be further from the truth.
I've long felt that the media has given Americans a distorted view of what people of faith believe, and the research of Media Matters proves that. I know that news judgment is often affected by harshness of rhetoric and the degree of conflict and scandal involved. But the vast majority of Americans of faith, many faith groups, are engaged in none of these, and thus won't appear in the media unless enterprising reporters and editors balance their coverage with what the majority of faithful Americans are in fact saying and doing.
When it comes to how the values that guide and inspire people of faith and of Catholics are reflected in television and our newspapers, this important report makes a compelling case, however, that Americans may be getting an incomplete story. This misrepresentation is of particular concern to Catholics, who in recent years have watched a small handful of commentators use the secular media to suppress our church's teachings on a number of important issues. Our church and its social missions suffer greatly when attention is turned away from dialogue about the Catholic Church's consistent opposition to the Iraq War, the growing gap between the rich and the poor, global warming, and the millions of Americans who lack health care.
I hope both the print and electronic media in this country will now seek the balance so many of them profess to have as they continue to report issues of religion and the impact on our society, government, and American culture.